I don't think it caught that. You want to do it again? Hey guys. You stop being weird. We're back. Last night I did a lot of the talking.
Yes,
And
that's good.
and last night was Joseph, and tonight and how the Israelites got into Egypt. And tonight we're going to cover Moses and the Exodus and tie that into some things maybe you didn't understand that it correlates to, or you didn't think about it, or whatever.
I was thinking about it.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
All right. Do you want to cover the growing up years?
Go ahead, you can.
Okay.
So you like to tell a story.
I do like to tell stories.
Moses was a good man.
Not
or was
really. I guess sort of. So
he was chosen.
He was definitely that. So the Pharaoh that was in power at the time of Moses, which is different than the one that enslaved the Egyptians, but obviously the same thought process, and even worse, he actually had sent out orders to kill all of the babies that were 2 years and under. Moses happened to be born in that time frame, was probably around 3 or 4 months old, something like that, and was set adrift in a basket made of reeds by his mother to save his life. She hid him until she couldn't hide him anymore. And so that's when she set him adrift. Pharaoh's daughter adopted him. So this Prince of Egypt movie where he's Pharaoh's stepson is not a thing. It's actually, he was Pharaoh's step grandchild.
Right.
And I'm kind of having ADD tonight, sorry. And
Moses grew up in Egypt.
But he knew that he was a Hebrew. Again, unlike the Prince of Egypt movie where he has this freak out moment. He's like, oh, I'm a Hebrew. But he knew the whole time. He did actually, though, murder a taskmaster for hurting a Hebrew, I guess, too severely. So he did murder, and 2 Israelites actually found the murdered body and questioned Moses about it. He thought he was being cool about it, and I think hid the body in the sand or something.
Yeah, something like that.
So that made him leave. He was like, okay, I'm done. Like, I'm out. I tried to help y'all, tried to keep it under wraps, and y'all are calling me out about it, so I'm going to leave before Pharaoh kills me. Since Pharaoh knows I'm a Hebrew. Anyway. So time goes by. He spends 40 years in Midian with the high priest of Midian. And if you remember back to our Abraham video, Midian was one of Abraham's sons. So these are descendants also of Abraham. And he ends up marrying the high priest of Midian's daughter, which is Zipporah. And then the angel of the Lord, angel of Yahuwah, however you want to say that, presented himself in a burning bush, spoke to him and told him, hey, you need to go back and free these people. And he's like, who am I to free them? They don't even like me. And I'm a murderer. And I don't talk well. For not talking well, he sure balked against God quite a few times.
Yeah.
So God was like, okay, look, I'll have you meet your brother. Your brother will speak for you. You're just going to do the miracles. Like, I'm going to tell you what to do, and you're going to do it. And give him a couple of examples, like sticking his hand in his coat and it was leprous, and then sticking it back in and it was fine again. You know, stuff like that. So he goes back to Egypt.
Don't forget the staff.
Oh, yeah, and the staff.
Takes the
staff with him because that became a snake that devoured the Pharaoh's magicians, 2 snakes that they made.
And other things.
Which, that was an awesome story to me because it proved that the dark has power too. So don't sit there and think that the darkness doesn't have any power in the physical realm, or in the spiritual realm. It definitely does, which is why you need to stay in the Word and stay protected and
stay in the light.
Stay focused and
stay in the Torah
as much as possible, because that is how you protect yourself, by knowing what's right and wrong. Everybody slips up, but when you go back into the world purposefully, is going to be
while
bad
knowing.
for you while knowing what's going on. So he goes, and Aaron goes, and they perform the plagues of Egypt. There's not 12 of them.
There's 10.
There's 10. I don't know why I said 12. Probably because the 12 tribes in my brain. So that's in Exodus chapters 5 through 10. Is the 12. Why do I keep saying that?
The 10 plagues.
10 plagues. And I'm going to briefly.
That's our time, by the way.
Okay. I'm going to briefly list off the plagues and the quote gods that they represented. So Yahuwah is showing them that while they worship these gods, he's above all of that.
And he convinced some of them. So it's not like they're just, blind to this.
And we'll get to that when we get to the actual Exodus, which is soon coming. Okay, so water into blood was the first one. And that's for, and if I'm not saying these names, forgive me, because I'm not Egyptian and I haven't read up a lot on that. It's not something I study a whole heck of a lot of. But anyway, Hapi, which was the god that was responsible for the inundation of the Nile. Frogs from the Nile, which is Heket, which is a frog-headed goddess of rebirth. Lice from dust, which is Geb, which is the god of earth or dust or dirt. Swarms of, now flies was put in there, so it could have been swarms of bees, but I'm going to go with flies just because that's how they translated it. But anyway, it's Kenepri or Nepri, which is a scarab-faced god, renewal of life. Maybe it was swarms of scarabs, since it was a scarab-faced god. Anyway, symbolizing renewal of life. Death of cattle and livestock, which is Hathor, the goddess of the sky. And also could also be translated as the god Manor, which is the god man or beast.
I'm glad she's stumbling over her own reading.
Shush. I wrote this down very quickly. Ashes spread to boils and sores, which was for Isis, which we'll get into in probably a future video that we're going to do, which is, she was supposed to be the goddess of healing and fertility. Hail and fire is for Nut, which had power over air and water. Locust was for Set or Seth. Foreign lands, earthquakes, death, and violence. 3 days of darkness was for Ra, which most people know about Ra, the sun god. He had power over the sun, heavens, etc., supposedly. And then 10, the death of the firstborn was actually, it offended and hurt the god on earth, Pharaoh. Pharaoh was supposed to be the mediator between the gods and men.
Well, that sounds familiar.
Mm-hmm. And he was considered, again, God on earth. So when his child died...
the other guy they call the Vicar of Christ or something?
The Pope.
Yeah, that guy.
Mm-hmm. I was going to go there. Anyway, okay, so they performed these awesome plagues through the power of Yahuwah, and they left. So do you want to read what happened when they left? We have one verse for this, and it's a very powerful verse. Go back and read the story. We're now in Exodus 12.
Chapter
And this is
12,
after the Passover,
38.
which is when the firstborn died, by the way.
That's right.
So I guess it was Exodus 5 to 12. Sorry.
And we have a Passover video. Go back and watch it.
Please.
And a mixed multitude, this is verse 38, starting 12, verse 38. And a mixed multitude went up also with them, and flocks, and herds, even very much cattle. And they baked matzah cakes of the dough which they brought forth out of Misraim,
which is Egypt.
For it was not leavened, because they were thrust out of Misraim and could not tarry. Neither had they prepared for themselves any victual.
So a mixed multitude went up with the Israelites. The mixed multitude was not the Israelites. The mixed multitude were other slaves. Some were actually Egyptians. So there were a lot of people that went with them. It goes on further to say that there were 600,000 just men alone of Israel. So if you count women, children, and who knows how many of the mixed multitude of nations that went with them, you're looking at 1 to 3 million
something
people.
like that.
Easy.
And you've got last night we brought up this timeline of the 400 years or the exact time to leave.
Mhm.
That's the very next verse 40 through pretty much 51. But that'll kind of give you that idea of who was
You
with
want
them.
to read it while you have it open?
I can.
Okay.
40. Now the sojourning of the children of Yashrael who dwelt in the land of Mizraim, which is Egypt, and in the land of Canaan, they and their fathers was 430 years. It came to pass at the end of the 430 years, even the selfsame day it came to pass that all the hosts of Yahuwah went out from the land of Mizraim.
The self same day.
That's the detail we were talking about yesterday. 42. It is a night to be much observed unto Yahuwah for bringing them out from the land of Mizraim. This is the night that Yahuwah This is that night of Yahuwah to be observed of all the children of Yashrael in their generations. And that's kind of what we're talking about is,
The children
are
of
you the children
Israel.
of Yashrael?
Mm-hmm. And the night that it's speaking of is Passover.
Yeah, that's the next verse again. And Yahuwah said unto Moshe and Aaron, this is the ordinance of the Passah. There shall no stranger eat thereof, but every man's servant that is bought for money, when you have circumcised him, then shall he eat thereof. A foreigner and a hired servant shall not eat thereof. In one house shall it be eaten. You shall not carry forth aught of the flesh abroad out of the house, neither shall ye break a bone thereof. All the assembly of Yashrael shall keep it. And we'll go further into that at another time, but you should definitely watch our Passover video. We read this
every year.
Yeah, and we do it at our Passover now more thoroughly.
Yeah. So they go into the wilderness. They travel for a little while, not the 40 years. This is in the very beginning. And he takes them to Sinai, and he gives Moses the commandments written with his own finger on Mount Sinai.
The first set.
But then he's like, hey man, while I've been up here giving you the 10 Commandments and stuff and etching it out for you and whatever, so you didn't have to work on it, you might want to go check out what your people are doing down there.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when he went down with the 10 Commandments, his people weren't waiting on God. They had already built themselves a God out of gold.
Now, he hadn't been gone that long.
It was 40 days.
40 days. I mean, it's not like he was gone forever.
They were like, he must be dead. He's been gone so long, and he, it's abandoned us, and all this sort of stuff.
Let's build something.
So, and unfortunately, Aaron was the one that actually built it. They pushed Aaron into it, and he's like, I think he tried to say no at first, but anyway, he ended up asking them for all of their gold, and he melted it down and fashioned it into a calf. So that kind of gives us perspective into what he did in Egypt, because he wouldn't have known, like I wouldn't know just coming at, hey, give me your gold, let me melt it, and I'm going to shape it into a calf. So that's probably one of the things that he did in Egypt, I would think, was make these images for them. But anyway, the point why we bring up the golden calf is because it didn't go unpunished by any means. So Moses was angry, and he actually broke the 10 Commandments. He threw them down and broke them, screamed at the people, and asked, who's for God and who's not. And most of the people that came back to him were of his own blood, the Levites, because he was from the tribe of Levi out of the 12 tribes of Israel. And they went through and they killed a bunch of people, which is why God made them the priests, because they were so zealous for him that they were willing to kill their brethren over it. And I'm not saying to go out and kill people by any means.
Don't get it twisted.
But that's why they were chosen for priests, because they literally guarded the commandments. They literally guarded the thoughts of God. Did they mess up and probably were worshiping the calf at first? Probably. But when Moses showed back up with the commandments from God, and they realized, okay, we haven't been abandoned. God is still on the mountain. I see the fire. I hear the booming thunder. And we messed up. Now we have to make things right. And so they went through and they killed a lot of people.
They made them drink the.
And
They
then,
melted the calf
well,
down.
and then after the people died is when Moses melted the calf down. He's like, you want this God of gold? You're going to drink it.
Yeah.
So a lot of the people died of
Poison.
Either they died of metal poisoning,
Yeah.
or they died from it being so hot that it scorched their insides.
Either way,
a lot of people died from drinking the gold that was of the calf that they built. So that's a really terrifying story about some of the consequences of breaking God's commands. And a lot of people think, well, they were just given the 10 Commandments and they hadn't even gotten the 10 Commandments yet. So why was the punishment so severe? But the fact is that people knew the commandments all the way even prior to the flood. They knew the commandments starting with Adam. Abel, Cain and Abel, Adam's two sons before Seth was born, and his other sons and daughters afterward. They knew the commandments and
right.
the law. Or else how would, Brad brought this up earlier, how would they have known to bring a first fruit offering to God?
That's right.
And why would Cain's have been displeasing if they knew what they were supposed to bring? Or unless
my brother's keeper?
Yeah. Or Enoch, he preached righteousness to the people before he was taken away.
How could he be righteous if he... That's what I was talking about.
Yeah. How could
where'd these righteous people come from? How did we know they were righteous?
And how did they know they're righteous? And how did the other men of the time know that they were righteous? Unless they were following God. And the only way to follow God is, yes, if he comes and talks to you, which he did with Enoch and he did with Abel, but eventually he stops altogether just coming down and starts speaking to them individually instead of just coming down to visit a whole group of people.
That's why the Torah, the law, was already in play. It was already rocking and rolling because people wouldn't have known what to do or why not to do.
You want to talk about Noah?
And then Noah, same idea.
What we were discussing before we started the video was that Noah was told to bring in 7 of the clean animals in pairs and 2 of the unclean animals in pairs.
How would he know that?
How would he know which animals were clean and unclean to bring in?
That's because God was the same from the beginning as he's going to be in the very, very end.
And if you don't believe it, read Isaiah 66. I'll digress on that for the time being. That'll be a different video.
That just kind of proves our point. He was the same before man as he is in the end when he brings his kingdom to man. Mm-hmm. It's literally the same exact changed. God. His name is Yahuwah, Yahweh, whatever you want to call him. It ain't God.
That's his title.
That's his title.
It's not his name.
Anyway,
we'll digress on that for a moment. But anyway, so they had the commandments. The problem was that they were involved in this pagan organization and had lived in a foreign land for so long, even in Canaan, when they kind of kept to themselves, but they were willing to let Shechem come in before they killed them all, and they, at least Jacob was willing to let Shechem come in, and if they were willing to follow the circumcision and the covenant and following only Yahuwah, of course they would have had to teach these people other things than just the circumcision, but the circumcision was the main one because it was in the flesh and it was actually a really painful thing.
It was in the flesh. It was like
and a test
in the heart.
Yeah.
Prior to Yahusha, Jesus, as people say.
Absolutely.
That's something to remember. The prophets speak of it as being circumcised of the heart, not just in the flesh. But everybody thinks that's a new thing. Well, that's what Yahusha brought.
Yeah, even Moses.
He was quoting the prophets.
Yeah, after even Moses prophesied at one point and said, there will come a day when it will no longer be in the flesh, but of the heart, the foreskin of the heart. So it's the flesh was kind of the physical of the spiritual. It was a physical representation, and it still is. If we circumcise our children, and we think that's still an important thing to do. But the most important thing is definitely of the heart. Like you have to have the heart, the mind, the soul
Yeah,
to
anybody can
follow
put on
him.
the Sadducees coat and say that you're a righteous man.
Hmm.
That's the physical, but
Hmm.
actually doing is the heart
It's the
and
hard part.
believing.
Well, it's not that hard, but
Heart.
I know.
Oh,
I said that was the hard part, but I was like, well, it's really not that hard. That's just what we were raised to believe. But anyway, so then after that, Moses had to go back up on Sinai for like what, twice as long, like 80 days or something. And he had, since he broke the
I think it was
commandments,
40 and 40 or 30, 40 and 40.
well,
Yeah.
anyway, he broke the Ten Commandments that were originally etched. So he was told that he had to go back up there and be sure that they were written down exactly, but he had to chisel the slates out himself. He had to chisel in the commandments himself.
Hey man, I know
And
you were mad, but you shouldn't have broke those.
the
Now I need you to recut them. I'm not doing it for you again.
pretty much. So the point is they had these commandments, but they had either forgotten them or whatever. So this time God's like, okay, I told you what to do, but now I'm going to put them in stone so you'll never forget them. They're always going to be with you. And he even made them build the Ark of the Covenant to carry them inside of.
It was a very physical thing back then.
It was a physical representation. But again, they had been in pagan nations so long and they were used to these little
430
trinkets
years, right?
and these little trinkets and these little idols and things. So he probably knew. And even now, we love our little things.
Sure.
Our necklaces, the wedding rings that people wear.
Where's your fidget spinner?
Yeah. Okay, sure. Take it
I'm
to
just
there.
saying.
But anyway, so he gave them the commandments, told them to build the Ark of the Covenant and put that in there.
Yeah.
But as a consequence for this, they had to wander for 40 years. And
there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
It was to clear out the bad. It was to clean.
It was a cleansing.
The cleansing of such.
Because during that 40 years, they would complain and they would moan and they would whine and they would cry. I don't want to eat the manna. Where's water? I'm thirsty. God's not providing for me. I want to go back to Egypt where I had some meat and cucumbers.
Well, here's 7 million quail. You're going to be stuffed with until you
choke on them and die. Literally, that happened. He sent quail and they ate them and they choked on them and they died before they could even swallow the first thing. The people who ate it died.
But me and Jen had to have a little heart to heart a few years ago about that.
Well,
they were eating quail prior to that as well, but not in the abundance.
Only one other time.
Well, yeah.
Anyway, because like at first he's like, see, I can provide you meat. And then they complain against him again. And he's like, all right, you want meat? I'll shove it down your throats and then you'll choke on it and die. So anyway.
He's a loving guy.
So he was given the laws and we're going to do an entire video on different things that people say, but we wanted to clarify just a couple of things. So like in Deuteronomy 30:11.
Duty
brought to me. Chapter 30, verse 11.
Chapter 30, verse 11. For this commandment which I command you this day, it is not hidden from you, neither is it far off.
So that means like it's not hard for you to understand and it's not unattainable. So the commandments that he gave us, and people are, oh, there's 613, no one can keep all of them. Well, if all of them applied to you, I would agree with that. And for a long time, I didn't know that all of those didn't apply, but they really don't. There's different sections, like one's for mothers and one's for husbands and one's for children and one's for just the priests. And so you just have to find which ones apply to you and put those into motion, which is why it's not too hard to do.
Most of the things you already do. And I'll keep reading here. Neither is it beyond the sea that you should say, who shall go over the sea for us and bring it unto us, that we may hear it and do it. But the word is very nigh unto you, in your mouth and in your heart, that you may do it.
Yeah. So it's closer than you think if you actually bother going through them and reading some of the laws. Some of them may seem a little silly, but there's a point to all of them. And some of them are not silly and some of them are ones that maybe on from a human standpoint you're like, "Ooh, I don't know if I want to do that." And some of them are just super easy and you're like, "Well, I already do that." For instance, there's a law that says don't turn your daughter into a prostitute.
How many of you think that's a bad idea?
I mean, I don't really want to turn my kid into a prostitute. There's one that says, what's another easy one?
Well, there's tons of them. Don't sleep with your family members.
Yeah,
Don't rape women. I mean, don't treat your servants like a dog. I mean, there's
and that's
all
not
kinds
meaning
of.
slaves. BT Dubs. The Bible does not condone slavery. Um,
Yeah, he sent Moses in to get them out of slavery. People are like, ah, God.
and he says, now that you're out of slavery, don't treat them badly, the ones that came with you. So he's like, don't repay the evil of that nation for evil. Like, treat them as you would treat one of your own people.
What I've came to realize is that almost all 613 of them,
Mm-hmm.
they all point back to the Ten Commandments in some way.
They do. You might have to think about it for a minute on how, but they do.
On some of them, yeah, but most of them are straight up like,
That's
don't
what I was
worship
talking
other
about.
gods. I
These
mean,
are
how
the
easy is that?
these are the Ten Commandments. These are the laws, like expounding on the Ten Commandments. Like it's
Yeah.
just a very thorough.
Breakdown
This
of
is
the Ten Commandments.
exactly what these Ten Commandments mean.
This is what it means not to murder someone.
Yeah. Murder, by the way, is not the same thing as kill. So in the Ten Commandments, if you have like a KJV, it says "Thou shalt not kill." It doesn't mean to literally not kill anyone, although you shouldn't. It means don't seek out to murder someone.
That's right.
If you're saving yourself in self-defense, that's not the same thing as murdering
That's
someone.
in Deuteronomy as well. That's
Yeah.
in the that's it. We can go hours about this.
We could.
We're gonna keep
Anyway,
moving on.
okay. 1 Timothy 1:9.
Hold on. There was one more story while they were in the wilderness. We didn't bring up.
We didn't bring up the other one.
Korah. I believe.
Korah.
Yeah, I don't know if that's how really say his name,
Well,
but his
that's what
group
we read it as.
did not want to do or follow Moses anymore, and they returned. They turned against Yahuwah, and Yahuwah told Moses, "Well, you need to separate from these people. Like, do it now." And so Moses walked out there,
fellow Levites.
they
were supposed to be
they
the
were
priests.
part of the group in some way, and there was a bunch of them.
No,
But he
these people
literally
were part of the priests.
regardless, they were in the movement across the wilderness, and they turned their back on Yahuwah, so Yahuwah turned his back on them. But the story always kind of, when I first read it, because I hadn't read it ever up until like 5 years ago, it was interesting how it made me feel to see how it just kind of freaked me out. I was like, whoa, that was ridiculous. Like, I get it, you're gonna drink this gold and all that's cool, but this was just like, wow. It's like, okay, Moses told everybody to back up from this whole group of people. It was him and his whole family. So it was whoever was with him, their sheep,
choose your side,
their kids, their wives.
Stay with them or come over with me.
Are you with me or are you with him, kind of thing. And the earth literally swallowed the entirety of the whole family up. The earth ate the people, sucked them under the ground or whatever. Opened up. It says it opened up and swallowed all the everything, their tents, their tools, their sheep,
the family, anything
they had. They went under the ground, and
including the women and the children,
the women and the kids. And you could hear the kids and the women screaming under the earth.
After it swallowed them and closed back up, they were still under there screaming.
Just like, wow, that's intense. But that would hopefully turn some people
back to,
you would think. I mean, that.
Well, I mean, if the drinking of the gold, if the choking on the quail, there's so many different
Not to mention the good things that was happening in front of them too, like the parting of the sea and the
and a rock providing water.
Sure.
Like splitting open and just providing water.
That wasn't enough. Let's just kill a few of you. But towards the end of that, nobody makes it. I think that's where you are now.
It's not, but we were about there. I was going to keep reading these.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Which one is it?
So Deuteronomy, the law is not too hard. You just have to find out which laws pertain to you and then do them. I agree 613 would be really hard to do, but 20, 25, that's not too hard to do, or at least to put your mind to trying to do. First Timothy 1:9 says that the law was made for sinners. You want to read that
First
one?
Timothy
Mm-hmm.
1:9.
You're not in frame.
Huh?
You're not in frame.
Oh, hello.
He keeps going out of frame. Sorry.
First Timothy 1:8. But we know that the Torah is good if a man conducts himself in it in accordance with the Torah. Knowing this, that the law is not made for a righteous man, but for the wicked and disobedient, for the unholy and for the sinners, for them without Yahuwah and profane, for murderers of fathers and murderers of mothers, for manslayers, for whoremongers, and them that defile themselves with mankind, for men stealers, liars, perjured persons, and if there be any other thing that is contrary to sound doctrine. So then you ask yourself, what is sound doctrine? What is he referring to as sound doctrine? He's referring all of these things in the Torah, the law, the things of the Old Testament, as the world likes to put. We're down to 13 minutes.
Okay. So, Psalm 119:05 says, "Your word is a lamp unto my feet and a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path." So the word is what shows us, it's the light in the darkness, and that's what shows us the path. And to touch on what he just read in Timothy, it says that the law was made for sinners. Why else would Paul say, "For all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God"? All of us are sinners. I know we don't like to think that about ourselves. Personally, I don't like to think that about myself, but the truth is we all are. We may not know each other's dark, dirty secrets, but God knows everything, and what isn't done in the dark will be brought to light eventually.
And that doesn't necessarily mean on earth or into other humans. The people like to say that could be right in front.
You could hold all your secrets.
I was there while you were standing in the closet in the dark. I saw you, and you're gonna be like, "Oh crap."
Mm-hmm. And then Proverbs 3:5. It's one of my favorites. "Lean not on your own understanding. In all your way acknowledge him, and he will direct your path." Now, some versions say make your path straight. That makes it seem like your life's going to be easy, but your life's going to actually be harder if you, not because of the law, but because you decide to follow the law. You're going to go through a lot of things. The devil's going to try to get you to come back in any way, whether that means that you lose your friends, whether that means that you break your leg. You know, he knows what our weaknesses are, and he will hit us where our weaknesses are. Anyway, okay, so they went through the desert for 40 years because of their lack of belief and their disobedience. They were not following the law that he set before them at Mount Sinai, and they just kept being disobedient. So as Brad said, everybody in that generation died except for two men, one of which we've already talked about, and that's Caleb. One of my favorite stories. Again, he was a Kenizzite that rose to be the leader of the Judah tribe, and he got to choose his own part of the promised land when they got in there. And the other one was the guy that took Moses' place as the leader of Israel, and that was Joshua, and he was not from the Levites. So I just thought that was interesting that he wasn't a Levite. But anyway, so Joshua and Caleb were the only two. Moses and Aaron didn't make it in. Aaron died.
And anyone else?
And none of that entire generation that came out of Egypt, that saw all the wonders and all the things that Moses had done, none of them made it because they refused, even though they saw the signs and the miracles. None of them followed him. They just kept being disobedient, kept being disobedient, kept being disobedient. So he's like, "Screw you guys. You're going to wander around until this generation dies. That's going to be your punishment. And I'm going to bring these new children who are going to be brought up in the way, and they will follow me into the promised land." Which, as Brad brought up, it's a symbolic of the last plague of Egypt, where the firstborn died. So the first generation that came out of Egypt all died, except for Joshua and Caleb. They were the only two.
It's a weird way to look at it, but it just kind of popped in my brain earlier.
And I agree. That was a good point. So how does this tie in? We've only got maybe 10 minutes left. So how does this tie into the past, and how does this tie into the future? So we're going to go back to Abraham real fast just to review because we've already spent a lot of time on him, but we're just going to kind of review real fast. In Genesis 17, 23 to 27, is when he's given the blessing um, for his house, and when he's told, you're going to be as numerous as the stars, etc., etc. In Genesis 22:18 is when he's told to not to Genesis 22:18 is when he's told that he and his house will be a blessing to all nations. Now, if you go back to Genesis 17:23 through 27, you'll see that he circumcised, like the same day he was told this, he circumcised himself, his son Ishmael, and all of the men in his house. That included his servants who were not Hebrew. I mean, some of them might have been, but Hagar was an Egyptian. I mean, she was a girl, so she couldn't be circumcised, but it kind of proves the point that he had servants from other nations. And if you read the story of Abraham, he was sent out of Egypt with many servants because of a trick that he and Sarah had played on
Oh yeah,
the
that's my
Pharaoh.
sister. Yeah.
It's a great thing. He told him that it was his sister and not his wife, although both were technically true.
Sure.
But anyway, so we see that it starts with his house. It's his seed, so his actual children get a special blessing to kind of be the rulers and the overseers and things like that. But that doesn't mean that they're the only ones that make it in. His whole house makes it in because they believed enough that they were willing to let Abraham do whatever. They didn't try to run away. They weren't.
Sure.
It doesn't say that the slaves tried to, or not slaves, the servants tried to like escape or anything like that. It just says that he circumcised his whole house. And that was something that he and I came across just a couple weeks ago. And we're like, whoa. So the promise doesn't just apply to Abraham's seed, but also those that are in the house. And we see
that promise, yes, but
the blessing was just for Abraham's seed, but the promise was for everybody. So we see that start there, and then again with the multitude that came out of Egypt, and they were told that the law that they were given applied to everybody. It says applied to the native and the strangers who sojourned among them. So that would be the Kenizzites, like Caleb, the Ishmaelites, if there were any, the Amalekites, the Egyptians, everybody that came out with Israel and agreed to follow Yahuwah, their children, they were all supposed to be a part of that promise because it was one law across the board. It's like when you have a child or children and you adopt a kid, one is not necessarily above the other as far as your house rules are concerned, right?
That's right.
Rules apply. And then how that ties into Yahusha. His message was to repent and be saved. What are they repenting from? If they don't have the law and they don't understand what to do, how do they know to repent? How do they even know they're doing anything wrong?
Yeah.
When he healed people, he always said, go and sin no more. Well, how would they even know what sin was? And then in Matthew 5:17, you want to read that?
Yep, quickly. This kind of ties into what we're talking about, and I'm sure you've heard this before. Matthew 5:17. This is Yahusha talking. Red letters for you KJV lovers. Think not that I am come to destroy the Torah or the prophets.
Torah being the law.
That's right. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For amen, I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one yod or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the Torah till all be fulfilled. Okay, so that's out of Yahusha's mouth. Here? The heaven is still above, and we're still walking on earth. Okay,
so it hasn't passed away.
It's still here.
Something that's taken way out of context. They read the verses before that and the verses after that, but they never, and by they I mean the pastors of today, they never focus on those verses.
The harlot.
They leave it alone, and it's very frustrating because people are getting cherry-picked verses, and we have to be very selective about the verses just for time constraints that we use. But we always encourage you, go back, read all of this. Matthew 15, 21 to 28 shows a story, one of the ones that I like, about a woman who's a Gentile. And he said, I didn't come for the dogs, I came for the lost children of Israel. She said, but even the dogs have to eat the scraps from their master's table. And he said, it'll be as you say because your faith is so strong. So he recognized that she wasn't a dog. And even if she was allowed to be in the house. You know,
That's right.
she wasn't sent outside.
She was housebroken.
Sure, something. Sure. Wow.
I'm just saying. I mean, think about it like that.
Well,
She was a dog prior to. She was invited into the house, right? And
because of her faith, her trust. That
so did it at that point have anything to do with being connected or bloodline to Abraham? That's the whole point of all this. You have to be connected through the spirit, not through the bloodline.
right.
Not that you may or may not be. I'm just simply saying that it's not about that.
And that's why Paul says in Galatians and in Romans and other places, you're grafted in. There's no more Jew or Gentile.
What are you grafted into?
You're only the seed of Abraham. You're only part of the house of Israel.
And if you're not grafted in, we're going to get off into that probably in another video.
Israel has been and always will be the chosen nation. Do you want to be a part of that? Do you want to be part of the mixed multitude?
Do you want to be at the church? If you're part of the church, if you're not the
church
bride,
of today,
right?
Not the church building or the church setup that they have today.
The wonderful music.
The actual. I like some of the music. I'm not gonna lie.
That's the point.
But we'll get off on that on the next video, because the next video we're going to be talking about who the church is, how it relates to the remnant of Israel, and then hopefully going over some commonly used phrases that are misconceptions that were lies passed down through the church.
Yep.
So we did it in under an hour.
We're there. 40. We got 1 minute left.
So
do you have any questions? Raise your hand.
No, type a comment down below.
Oh, that's right.
Don't forget to click the notification bell and subscribe. Isn't that what I'm supposed to say?
That's what everybody else says when they do these weird videos.
I mean, I wish you would, honestly, because we're going to start popping out some more videos after this series. I try not to
wish anything.
Okay, we pray. Sorry.
That's right.
It's just another thing.
Just rolls off the tongue.
It does.
We are sorcerers, apparently.
Not at heart. But anyway, okay. See you guys later. Are you going to do the...
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Till next time,
Bye.
I'm John Burgundy.
Stop saying that.